Richard, let's talk a little bit about that sort of pivotal point, like when you started doing photography, because photography, and talking with you a little bit during the break, you were like, no, I was always known as Richard the nurse. But I find, at least, in fairly recent years, it's like, Richard Hallman, yeah, the photographer, yeah. But you said that transition wasn't necessarily easy to kind of get people to go, no, I'm serious. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, photography has been a passion of mine forever, and we had a darkroom in our house growing up. My father was way into photography, and my older brother wasn't that much interested in it, and so my dad really made the chemicals, the paper available, and really encouraged that. And I always had a camera in my hand. I mean, it's always kind of a running joke that I was born and came out with a camera in my hand and was taking pictures of the doc, delivering me. But I always knew that I loved it. But I was in a sort of I knew what it took to be really successful, and 1 in a million kind of make it kind of thing. And so I knew I liked my stuff. I just wasn't wanting to put my stuff out into the public critiques,
right,
so to speak. So it took a long time doing that, but living in wonderful places like Breckenridge and moving to the Gorge, obviously one of the most beautiful places in the world, really sparked my interest again and getting more into photography. And then with nursing, you're working 12-hour shifts. You're working 3 days, have 4 days off. You sometimes stack those together. The staff at the hospital is wonderful in allowing me time off to travel and do things, and so I started pursuing other things that I was really interested in, beyond remodeling my house and traveling. But I got to go to Nepal in the fall of 2000, and when I came back, did a big public slideshow, and it just happened that there was a writer for the LA Times in the audience and was doing a travel piece on Hood River, and he actually started his article with why does somebody in a crowded movie theater yell, "I love Hood River"? Well, the story starts 27 years ago, and then comes back around at the end to revisits that and talks about my slideshow. And so that was syndicated. It was all over the U.S., and that sort of got me thinking, well, maybe I can do this as a side job or whatever. But then in the fall of 2000, my friend Aaron Sales, who's the editor of Kiteboarding Magazine, he was working for Slingshot at the time. He called me up and said, hey, we need a photographer to do a week to 10-day travel story in New Zealand on snow kiting. Are you available? And so I made myself available, and it was on that trip where we traveled all over the South Island and ended up on the West Coast, and took a helicopter up to the Fox Glacier, and we were staying in a climbing hut above the clouds, and I'm shooting these guys snow kiting up there. That it was just one of those epiphany moments where I realized that this is what I want to do.
This is what I want to do.
I know I need to come back and give the bad news to my boss that I'm going to be leaving nursing, and gave her a 4-month head start on filling my position. But I knew that's at that point this is what I wanted to do.
And that was about 6 years ago or so?
That was 2004.
2004.
So, yeah, almost 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So as you started, once you made that, the transition into, okay, this is what I'm doing full time. I've given my notice. I've given very fair warning, that I'm doing this. So now everybody's going to know this is what I'm doing. Was that a lot of pressure? Like, I really got to pull this off.
Well, it really wasn't a lot of pressure because my license was current, and I was able to actually renew my license for another 2 years. So my license and all my credentials were current for about 3 years after actually quitting. So I always kind of knew I had that safety net that if things really, went awry, then I could go back to nursing. And I love nursing. It wasn't something like, oh, I'm so glad I'm out of this.
Right.
But I just was a little more passionate about the photography.
Yeah.
And so, I was just really lucky in that respect.
Yeah. Well, perfect. So as you're, well, now not really developing your career. I mean, you've pretty much developed your career, and now it's just sort of taking it to those next levels.
Correct.
Some of the things I understand that you're doing a lot of is photographing heliskiers and going to like Alaska, and then big wave surfing. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
So pretty opposite extremes there, as far as way up on the top of a mountain and then down on a beach somewhere.
Yeah.
What do you prefer, one or over the other at all? Or?
Well, you know, they're both just fantastic mediums to capture, and I've been fortunate enough. You know, I haven't done as much. I've done quite a bit. I mean, to quantify like how much is a lot of heli skiing. I mean, maybe 5 or 6 different sort of trips where I'm shooting from a helicopter, and you know. But in 2006, I was up on a trip to Cordova, Alaska, points north, and I was really fortunate. On our last day, we hadn't. You can only fly when it's clear. So when it's rainy or snowing up high, you can't fly, and so. We were down the whole week. We didn't get one day in, and I was with a whole group of orthopedic docs that are awesome skiers, and so they were on their week break, and so all of them, we decided to bail on the very last day. We had one more day we could have hung out, but the weather didn't look good, so we were gonna pack it in, and so we were on our way to the airport, and then we got a call saying it's clearing, we're gonna fly. So we had to turn around, and it was a full fire drill to get out of our travel clothes, get into our ski clothes, and get into the heli. And then, so that day we were out, I managed to, shoot almost 1,000 photos. And then, so that was now our last night. And then that night, Seth Westcott, who at the time was just coming off his first gold medal at the Turin Games in Europe, he now he's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. He was in-house for the next month, and so he happened to catch my slideshow, and he was down a photographer and asked me if I wanted to stick around for a few weeks and be his personal photographer.
Wow.
So yeah, I was really, really lucky at that point. So I went from, hanging out with my friends and shooting heli skiing, which is just really trying to capture on the go. You couldn't stop to set things up, to now I'm actually... They take the door off. I'm buckled with my boots out on the skids, and I'm hanging out of the helicopter, and it was the real deal.
Do you love that?
Oh man, that's
gotta be a rush.
It's a total rush.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid of heights too, believe it or not.
No way.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why I'm drawn and attracted to mountaineering. And I mean, I've been skydiving before, and
pushes you way out of the comfort zone.
And there's something about trying to overcome that stuff. Of course, I went skydiving once, and I would never do it again, kind of thing. But yeah, it pushes you, and it's and little increments of overcoming things like that are really rewarding.
Yeah, very cool. Well, when we come back from the break, we'll continue the conversation. So more with Richard when we come back. Be right back.
Coming up, they talk about brain waves of different athletes and where they are in certain situations. And like an archer, for instance, right before they're ready to release an arrow, their brain waves are low alpha, like very low cycle, and they're very focused on that particular thing that they're doing.